Hey guys, tonight we dive deep into the shadows of history, exploring the horrific breaking wheel execution method, a brutal relic from the medieval world that makes your spine tingle just thinking about it. You stand there in the misty dawn of a cobblestone square, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and anxious whispers, as a massive wooden wheel looms like a giant's forgotten toy, ready to spin tales of agony that echo through the ages. You probably won't expect that this wasn't just a one-off nightmare but a go-to punishment that outlasted kings and empires, lingering longer than your average bad habit. So before you listen to my story, give me a like and subscribe so I know you're still listening with me. You drift back now, easing into the cradle of antiquity, where the first whispers of this dreadful device begin to stir. You feel the dry heat of an ancient sun beating down on your skin, the dust of forgotten roads kicking up around your feet as you wander through the cradle of civilizations. It's here in the hazy mists of early history that the breaking wheel or something eerily like it starts to take shape. You imagine yourself as a weary traveler in the lands of the ancient Assyrians or perhaps the Greeks, where tales of wheeled torments flicker in the firelight of old myths. The air carries the faint tang of olive oil and incense, masking the underlying dread of justice served raw. Historians point to roots possibly stretching back to the 6th century BC, with vague references in Persian and Roman text hinting at wheels used to crush rebels or thieves. A mainstream fact woven into the fabric of early punitive systems designed to deter with sheer spectacle. But let's ease into this gently, shall we? You lean back against a weathered stone wall, the roughness grazing your shoulders, as you ponder how this method morphed from crude bludgeonings to a refined art of suffering. A quirky tidbit floats in like a stray breeze. Some say the wheel's design drew inspiration from the chariots of war gods, turning tools of conquest into instruments of doom. Talk about recycling gone horribly wrong. You chuckle softly to yourself, imagining an ancient inventor pitching it like, "Hey, why not repurpose that old wagon wheel for some light executions?" Efficiency at its finest. The sarcasm lingers in your mind, a gentle buffer against the chill settling in your bones. As you delve deeper, you sense the spread beginning, like a shadow lengthening at twilight. You're transported to the Roman Empire now, where the clamor of forums and the metallic scent of legionary camps fill your senses. The wheel appears in accounts from the 4th century AD, tied to the legend of Saint Catherine of Alexandria, who was condemned to it for her unyielding faith. You visualize the scene, the crowd's distant roar like a low hum in your ears, the wood splintering not under a victim's weight but miraculously, as the story goes, shattering before it could harm her, earning it the nickname Catherine Wheel. This fringe detail adds a twist of irony, doesn't it? A device meant for destruction, blessed by a saint's touch, yet it went on to claim countless lives. You smirk faintly, whispering to yourself, if only every bad invention came with a divine warranty like that. Poof. Problem solved. No more awkward family heirlooms. Scholars openly debate the precise birthplace of this horror, questioning whether it bloomed from Roman ingenuity or migrated from Germanic tribes during the empire's fraying edges. Was it a borrowed cruelty from the East, or a homegrown response to rising chaos? The air around you thickens with the aroma of aged leather tomes, pages turning slowly as experts argue over fragmented artifacts and biased chronicles. You feel the weight of uncertainty, like a soft blanket of fog inviting you to linger. But onward you glide, the path widening into medieval Europe, where the wheel truly found its groove. You cross into the Dark Ages, the landscape shifting to rolling fields of emerald under a sky heavy with rain, the earthy smell of plowed soil grounding you. Here in the heart of the Holy Roman Empire and France, the breaking wheel surges in popularity around the 12th century, becoming a staple for dealing with highwaymen and murderers. You hear the distant creak of cartwheels on muddy tracks, a sound that now carries a sinister undertone. A mainstream historical fact anchors this. By the High Middle Ages, as noted in legal codes like the Saxon Spiegel, it was reserved for the most heinous crimes. symbolizing society's ironclad grip on order amid feudal turmoil. Yet, in this sleepy reverie, a modern aside tickles your thoughts. Imagine scrolling through your feed today and stumbling on a viral post about extreme medieval workouts, with the wheel as the ultimate ob machine. You'd laugh, right? Sign me up for that spin class. Said no one ever. The gentle sarcasm eases the tension, like a warm breath on a cool night. Another light quirk emerges. In some fringe accounts, the wheel was occasionally decorated with spikes or iron rims, not for extra pain, but to make it roll smoother during processions, because nothing says public event like a well-polished torture tool. As you continue tracing its path, you feel the chill wind from the north, carrying scents of pine and sea salt from Scandinavia and the Low Countries. The method hops borders effortlessly, adapting to local flavors, perhaps a touch more theatrical in Italy, where public squares buzz like ancient arenas. You stand at the edge of a bustling medieval fair, the air alive with the sizzle of roasting chestnuts and the murmur of haggling voices, but your gaze fixes on the scaffold in the distance. Scholars debate fervently if this diffusion was driven by crusading knights sharing grim stories around campfires, or by wandering executioners peddling their trade like macabre merchants. Picture a medieval travel brochure boasting, "Visit France, home of fine wine, romance, and wheels that break more than just the ice." You smile faintly, the humor a soft pillow cushioning the darker edges. Sensory details envelop you, rough texture of hemp ropes, the faint metallic tang of blood long faded into legend as you realize how this ancient seed planted itself firmly in European soil, sprouting into a tree of terror that would overshadow peasant lives for centuries. You ease further, the narrative flowing like a lazy river, connecting dots from antiquity's cradle to the medieval bloom. In the lands described by historians like Robert Fossier, in his glimpses of peasant existence, this punishment loomed large, a wooden specter crushing not just bones but spirits in the rural West. The quirky edge persists. Oddly, the wheel-inspired fireworks displays centuries later, spinning sparks in celebration rather than screams. Life's way of flipping the script, I suppose. But as the origins unfold before you, the scholarly debate lingers like a whisper. Did cultural exchanges during the migration period accelerate its spread? Or was it an independent evolution in isolated regions? You ponder this, the soft cadence of history lulling you, as the ancient roots twine deeper, setting the stage for the horrors yet to come in the everyday grind of medieval life. The everyday grind envelops you now, pulling you into the heart of a medieval village, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of wood smoke and fresh-turned soil, the distant lowing of cattle blending with the rhythmic clank of a blacksmith's hammer. You trudge along a muddy path lined with thatched huts, your boots sinking slightly into the damp earth, feeling the weight of a world where survival hinges on the whims of weather and lords alike. In this rustic tapestry of the medieval West, as painted by historians like Robert Fossier, in his vivid portraits of peasant existence, life unfolds in a cycle of toil and tradition, where the breaking wheel stands as a stark reminder of the boundaries not to cross. You sense the communal pulse, neighbors sharing bread and burdens, yet always under the shadow of authority that demands obedience with unforgiving force. You rise with the first light filtering through cracks in your humble dwelling, the chill of dawn nipping at your skin like a persistent whisper, urging you to the fields. The mainstream historical fact here is clear. Between the 11th and 14th centuries, peasants formed the backbone of European society, tilling lands owned by feudal lords and paying dues that left little for themselves, as detailed in accounts of rural economies straining under population growth and scarce resources. Your days blur into one another, sowing seeds in spring's hopeful mud, harvesting under summer's relentless sun. The earthy aroma of hay filling your nostrils as you stack sheaves against the coming winter. But amidst this, the specter of crime looms, for in a world where hunger gnaws and disputes flare over a stray goat or a boundary stone, the gravest offenses like murder or treason disrupt the fragile order, calling for punishments that echo through the community like thunder. Why such horrors for the serious criminals? You wonder, as you pause by a communal well, the cool splash of water on your hands a brief respite. Fossier's descriptions illuminate this. The breaking wheel was reserved for those whose acts threatened the very fabric of peasant society, highway robbers preying on travelers, arsonists torching barns that held a village's sustenance, or rebels challenging the Lord's iron rule. You feel the tension in the air, thick as fog rolling in from the fields, knowing that justice in these times wasn't just retribution but a public lesson, etched into collective memory to deter the desperate or the daring. The method's brutality matched the crime's severity, crushing not just bodies, but the impulse toward chaos in a land where law was sparse and enforcement sporadic. In some villages, the wheel itself was sometimes stored in the churchyard, doubling as a makeshift sundial during peaceful times. Talk about multitasking your torture gear right. You chuckle softly, imagining a peasant glancing at it to check the hour, muttering, "Well, at least it's not spinning, today must be lunchtime." The gentle sarcasm eases the mood, a warm flicker in the dim light of history's harsher truths. As you wander further, passing a group of children chasing chickens through the dust, their laughter a soft melody against the backdrop of labor, you delve into the why behind the reservation for gravest crimes. Society's structure demanded it, with no standing police. Deterrence relied on spectacle, making the wheel a tool for maintaining the hierarchical peace. You inhale the sharp tang of fermenting ale from a nearby brewhouse, a staple that dulled the edges of hardship but could spark brawls leading to dire consequences. It's like those reality TV shows where one wrong move gets you voted off the island, except here, the island's your life, and the vote's a swing of the executioner's arm. You'd probably binge watch from afar, remote in hand, thinking, "Glad that's not my Tuesday." Scholars openly debate whether these punishments truly stemmed chaos or merely bred resentment, questioning if the wheel's terror unified communities through shared fear or fractured them with underlying injustice. Did it reinforce the peasant's stoic resilience, or sow seeds of quiet rebellion that flowered in later uprisings? The air around you softens with the scent of blooming wildflowers along the hedgerows, inviting contemplation as you sit on a weathered log, the bark rough under your palms. You immerse deeper, feeling the rhythm of festivals that punctuated the drudgery, maple dances with ribbons fluttering like colorful dreams, the sweet smell of honey cakes wafting through the crowd. Yet even here, the wheel's shadow lingers, for Fossier notes how justice was woven into daily life, with executions timed to coincide with market days for maximum impact. You stand among the throng, the buzz of bartering voices enveloping you, aware that a pickpocket caught today might face lesser fates like stocks or fines, but a murderer, that's will territory, reserved to underscore the sanctity of life in a world rife with peril from famine to plague. Envision a medieval self-help book titled Wheel of Fortune. How not to end up on the wrong side, complete with tips like don't steal the Lord's horse. It's a real bone breaker. You smile faintly, the humor, a gentle lullaby softening the narrative's edge. Sensory details pull you back, warmth of sunlight on your face, the distant ring of church bells calling to vespers, grounding you in this immersive world. Understanding deepens as you explore the psychological toll. Peasants, bound to the land like vines to trellises, viewed such punishments as divine ordinance, aligning with the Church's teachings on sin and redemption. Fossier's lens reveals a society where the wheel symbolized not just earthly law but cosmic balance, crushing the wicked to preserve the harvest for the righteous. You feel the soil crumble between your fingers as you kneel in a field, planting hopes for tomorrow, knowing one grave misstep could uproot everything. Oddly, some folklore tied the wheel to pagan rituals of renewal, where breaking represented cycles of death and rebirth, thou twisted into Christian retribution. It retained a whisper of ancient mysticism. You ponder this, the wind rustling leaves like pages turning in an old manuscript. Were these methods a product of feudal necessity or a reflection of broader cultural cruelty, with experts arguing over influences? from Roman legacies versus indigenous customs. As you glide through this context, the peasant life's textures roll against your skin, the taste of coarse bread on your tongue, a vivid backdrop, explaining why the breaking wheel, in all its horror, was the ultimate sanction for those who shattered the communal vessel. You sense the interconnectedness now, callbacks to antiquity's roots evolving into this rural reality, where the wheel's purpose crystallizes amid the sweat and soil of everyday existence. The sleepy cadence carries you onward, the horrors contextualized in the quiet struggles that defined an era. The quiet struggles whisper on, drawing you deeper into the folds of judgment where fates are sealed not by chance, but by the heavy hand of medieval law. You find yourself in the dim confines of a lord's hall, the air thick with the musty scent of aged timber, and flickering torchlight casting long shadows that dance like uneasy spirits across stone walls. Here, amid the echoes of antiquity's roots now firmly planted in this rural soil, the process of selecting those doomed to the wheel unfolds with a chilling deliberation, pulling you into the web of accusations and verdicts that separate the merely wayward from the truly damned. You stand at the periphery of a makeshift court, the rough-hewn benches creaking under the weight of villagers gathered in hushed anticipation, their breaths mingling with the faint aroma of unwashed wool and herbal poultices. The mainstream historical fact grounds this scene in the medieval West, as chronicled in works like Fossier's depictions of peasant justice. The breaking wheel was exclusively meted out for capital crimes such as murder, arson, or highway robbery, offenses that ravaged communities by endangering lives, livelihoods, or the sacred order upheld by church and crown. You watch as a bailiff reads charges aloud, his voice a monotonous drone that slices through the tension, detailing how accused brigand ambushed travelers on fog-shrouded roads, stripping them of coin and hope alike. Your pulse quickens faintly, the sensory pull of crackling flames in the hearth warming your cheeks, while the cold dread of inevitability settles in your chest. As the selection process grinds forward, you witness the layers of inquiry, witness testimonies tumbling out like scattered grains from a harvest sack, each one scrutinized by the lord or his proxy, whose fur-trimmed robes brush the floor with authoritative swishes. For those fated to the wheel, it's not just any misdeed. You feel the gravity as cases of treason against the feudal lord or sacrilege against the church elevate the punishment, ensuring the offenders and mirrors the disruption they've wrought. You lean against a pillar, the cool stone pressing into your back, pondering how this culling begins with whispers of suspicion in alehouses, escalating to formal arrests by night watchmen wielding lanterns that bob like will-o'-the-wisps in the dark. In certain regions, the condemned were sometimes chosen via divine ordeal, like holding a red-hot iron without blistering thaw. If you failed, well, the wheel awaited as your consolation prize. Because nothing says fair trial like a barbecue for your hand, you chuckle softly to yourself, imagining a modern courtroom show with that twist, order in the court. Next up, the hot poker challenge. Jealouser gets the spin cycle. The gentle sarcasm floats like a feather, lightening the ASMR hush of rustling parchments and murmured prayers. You glide through the proceedings, sensing the build-up as evidence mounts, stolen goods unearthed from hidden caches, bloody daggers presented with dramatic flair. The types of offenses warranting this fate paint a vivid mosaic. Picture the arsonist who torched a neighbor's barn during a drought, flames leaping skyward in a roar that devours stored grain and dreams of winter survival, or the murderer whose kinfuge spilled into deadly violence under a harvest moon, the metallic tang of spilled life lingering in the air. You inhale deeply, the imagined smoke from such blazes tickling your nostrils, a reminder of how these acts fractured the communal bonds Fossier so poignantly describes, justifying a response that crushed the perpetrator as thoroughly as their crimes crushed hope. Scholars openly debate the fairness of this selection, questioning whether class biases skewed verdicts. Did peasants face the wheel more readily than nobles? Or was it a rare equalizer in a stratified world? The air around you softens with the scent of beeswax candles guttering low, inviting reflection on these unresolved tensions. You delve into the nuances now, feeling the emotional undercurrents as families plead for mercy, their voices cracking like dry twigs underfoot. Yet for serious criminals, leniency is a ghost. You see how repeat offenders, those who've evaded lesser penalties like flogging or pillory, graduate to this ultimate doom. The highwayman, with his cloak stained from rainy ambushes and pockets lined with ill-gotten trinkets, embodies the archetype rain on merchants, whose caravans creak along rutted paths, disrupting trade that feeds villages. Your ears catch the phantom jingle of coins, a sound that once promised prosperity but now heralds ruin. Think of it as medieval HR firing someone with extreme prejudice. You're terminated and rotated. You smile faintly, the humorous soft whisper against the narrative's gravity. Sensory immersion deepens, chill drafts slipping through arrow-slit windows, carrying hints of autumn leaves decaying outside, mirroring the decay of justice's mercy. As you witness more, the process reveals its ritualistic side. Confessions extracted in dank cells, where the drip of water on stone walls echoes like a metronome of despair, often under duress from thumb screws or the mere threat of the wheel itself. Fossier's peasant lens shows how these selections reinforced social control, targeting those whose actions invited famine or fear into tight-knit hamlets. You stand there, invisible observer, heart sensing to the pounding gavel that seals fates, understanding that not all accused reach this point. Petty thieves might lose a hand, but the wheel claims only the architects of profound harm. Curiously, some chronicles mention wheel-worthy crimes, including witchcraft accusations, where brewing potions in moonlit cauldrons led to this, in adding a supernatural spice to the roster. As if everyday villains weren't dramatic enough, you ponder this, the wind howling faintly outside like a chorus of forgotten souls. Did this method's selectivity truly reflect moral outrage, or was it manipulated by power plays, with historians arguing over records that blur lines between justice and vengeance? Callbacks to the contextual struggles amplify her. The sweat of fields now stained by the soil of graves, antiquity's cruelty refined into targeted terror. You feel the culmination as the doomed are marked, perhaps with a branded symbol on their skin, the sizzle a harbinger of worse to come. The offenses explored, from regicide plots hatched in shadowy taverns reeking of sour wine to rapine that shattered familial peace, all converge on this path. Your breath slows, the ASMR quality enveloping you in a cocoon of historical haze, as the selection's echo propels you toward the rituals awaiting the condemned. The rituals awaiting the condemned enfold you now, a somber procession pulling you from the hall's fading echoes into the twilight of final days, where time stretches like taffy in the grip of inevitability. You shuffle down a narrow corridor of a medieval dungeon, the damp stone walls closing in with a chill that seeps into your bones, carrying the faint, musty odor of mold and despairing sighs. Torchlight flickers erratically, casting your shadow long and wavering, as you accompany the doomed soul, perhaps that highwayman from the court's stern gazethra, the haze of what remains of their earthly tether. From whispered confessions to the eerie setups that prelude the wheel's grim turn, you enter a dimly lit cell first, the iron bars clanging softly behind you like a muffled bell toll, the air heavy with the scent of straw scattered on the floor, and the acrid tang of unemptied buckets. Here, the final days begin with isolation, a mainstream historical fact drawn from Fossier's accounts of peasant justice. In the medieval West, the condemned often spent weeks or months in such confines, awaiting execution while being urged towards spiritual reckoning, as the church insisted on saving souls even as bodies were forfeit. You sit on a rough pallet, feeling the prickly fibers against your skin, watching as a priest in hooded robes approaches, his footsteps a soft patter on the uneven flagstones. Confession unfolds in hushed tones, sins spilling out like water from a cracked jugwarders confessed, regrets murmured seeking absolution that might lighten the eternal load, if not the temporal one. As days blur into one another, marked only by the slivers of light creeping through arrow-slit windows, You sense the psychological unraveling, the mind-wandering paths of what-ifs while the body weakens on meager rations of bread and water, their stale taste lingering on your tongue. The preparations creep in subtly at first, guards delivering the last meal, perhaps a hearty stew with chunks of root vegetables and a hint of herbs, a final earthly comfort before the storm. You savor it imaginatively, the warmth spreading through you like a fleeting embrace, knowing it's laced with the irony of nourishment for a frame soon to be shattered. A quirky tidbit drifts into this somber space like an unexpected moth fluttering toward the flame. In some locales, the condemned were allowed a farewell feast that included bizarre requests, like a whole roasted swan for a noble thief though for peasants. It was more likely a loaf and ale, because nothing screams Last Supper like upgrading from gruel to something vaguely edible. You chuckle faintly, picturing the kitchen staff grumbling, "Sure, make it fancy, it's not like he's sticking around for seconds." The gentle sarcasm whispers through, a buffer against the encroaching chill. You glide onward, the narrative flowing as the prisoner is led to ablutions, a basin of cold water splashed over face and hands, the droplets tracing icy trails down your neck, symbolizing a purification rite echoing back to antiquity's cleansing waters, now adapted in this medieval tableau. The eerie preparations intensify. The executioner arrives to shave limbs or measure for bindings, his tools clinking softly in a satchel that smells of oil and leather, ensuring no hair or cloth impedes the wheel's work. You feel the razor's edge graze your skin, a shiver running through you, as whispers of the scaffold's assembly filter in from the square outside, a thud of hammers driving posts into the creak of wood being hoisted, building tension like a storyteller pausing mid-tale. It's reminiscent of those spa preps before a big event, but instead of a wedding glow-up, it's a wheel down, with the attendant muttering, "Exfoliate those bones. We want them pristine for the sleepy." Lilt invites a soft laugh. You'd probably opt for Netflix and chill over this any night, remote in hand, far from such archaic pampering. As the hours dwindle, rituals layer on donning of a simple shift, white as surrender, its coarse fabric brushing your shoulders like a ghostly touch. You hear the tolling of bells from the village church calling not for mass, but for the procession's start. A family member might slip in for a tearful adieu, their embrace warm yet fleeting, scented with the hay from fields they'll tend alone. Fossier's peasant vignettes show how these moments humanize the horror, allowing kin to offer trinkets or prayers beads, small anchors in the storm. Scholars openly debate the role of these drawn-out preparations. Were they merciful interludes for reflection, granting time for genuine contrition, or calculated extensions of torment that amplified dread? In a scholarly murmur, the air around you quiets, the scent of incense from the priest's censer wafting in lazy curls, inviting you to linger on this. You follow as the condemned is paraded briefly, perhaps through streets where children peek from doorways, their wide eyes reflecting the mix of awe and fear, the air buzzing with murmurs, and the gathering crowd's murmurs. The eerie setup escalates. At the scaffold's base, the wheel is inspected, its spokes gleaming with fresh varnish or ominously scarred from prior use, the executioner testing its sturdiness with a firm shake that sends vibrations through the platform. You stand there feeling the wood's grain under your fingertips, knowing this is where the bindings will soon take hold. Imagine the executioner as a medieval IKEA assembler, frowning at the instructions, "Insert tabba into slot B. Wait, no, that's for the leg crusher. This is the full deluxe model." You smile gently, the humor a flickering candle in the den. Censer waves deep and distant low chant of monks intoning litanies for the condemned, their voices a harmonic drone that lulls like ASMR whispers, blending solace with sorrow. Preparations include anointing with holy oils, a slick residue on your forehead carrying the scent of myrrh, bridging the spiritual dimension to this corporeal end. Oddly, in isolated chronicles, some prisoners received prophetic dreams during these vigils, interpreted as divine interventions or hallucinations from stressed tales of saints appearing to promise paradise. adding a mystical veil to the pragmatic cruelty. You contemplate this, the cell's shadows lengthening like unanswered queries. The build-up peaks as the final night descends, moonlight filtering in pale beams illuminating the prisoner's arrest's form. Callbacks to the selections echo faintly, that brigand's face now pallid, eyes hollow from the weight of chosen fate. Rituals conclude with a notary recording last statements, quill scratching parchment in rhythmic strokes, preserving words that might caution others or curse the wheel itself. You sense the inexorable tide, the preparations weaving an eerie prelude that transforms near waiting into a symphony of anticipation. The sleepy cadence carrying you seamlessly toward the square where the wheel stands poised, its ominous silhouette etched against the pre-dawn sky. The ominous silhouette etched against the pre-dawn sky sharpens into focus as you crest the final rise, your footsteps crunching on gravel paths worn smooth by countless processions, leading you inexorably to the heart of the public square where the wheel dominates like a silent sentinel. The air grows thicker here, laced with the mingled scents of dew-kissed grass and the acrid smoke from early morning fires in surrounding homes. As the first hints of daylight paint the scene in muted grays and golds, you arrive amidst a gathering throng, bodies pressing close in a human tide, their murmurs rising like a low hum that vibrates through your chest, building an electric anticipation that crackles in the crisp morning chill. This is the execution site, the communal arena where medieval justice unfolds in all its raw theater. Callbacks to the rituals, eerie hush now shattered by the square's awakening buzz. You weave through the crowd, feeling the brush of coarse cloaks against your arms and the occasional elbow nudge from eager spectators jostling for a better view, their breaths visible in puffs against the cooling air. The wheel itself looms at the center, mounted on a raised scaffold of sturdy oak beams that creak faintly under their own weight, its spokes radiating out like the fingers of a giant hand poised to grasp. Torches flicker around the perimeter, casting warm orange glows that dance across faces etched with a mix of morbid curiosity and sullen dread. The illuminating vendors hawking pies and ale as if this were a fairground rather than a field of finality. You inhale deeply, catching the savory waft of baked goods mingling incongruously with the underlying earthiness of trampled mud, a sensory cocktail that heightens the surreal atmosphere. The crowd's anticipation swells palpably, whispers escalating to excited chatter, as more villagers stream in from side streets, children perched on shoulders for a glimpse, elders nodding sagely as if recounting tales from executions past. You stand there rooted, feeling the collective pulse. Quick Anthea maid clutching her shawl tighter, the burly farmer shifting his weight impatiently, all eyes drawn to the scaffold where the executioner prepares with methodical calm. He's a hooded figure, broad-shouldered and deliberate, his leather apron stained from prior duties, sharpening tools on a whetstone with rhythmic scrapes that cut through the din like a knife through silence. The mainstream historical fact anchors this tableau. In the medieval West, as Fossier describes in his portraits of peasant life, public executions like the breaking wheel were staged in central squares to maximize visibility and impact, serving as deterrents that reinforced communal norms and lordly authority amid the era's sparse law enforcement. As you observe, the executioner's grim readiness unfolds like a well-rehearsed ritual. He tests the wheel's rotation with a firm push, the wood groaning in response, ensuring it spins true for the spectacle ahead. Ropes dangle from pulleys, coiled neatly like sleeping serpents, and a mallet rests nearby, its head gleaming with fresh polish, ready to deliver blows that echo the crime's severity. You feel a shiver trace your spine, not from cold but from the proximity to this engine of agony, the air around it seeming heavier, charged with the residue of past screams absorbed into the planks. The crowd hushes momentarily as he adjusts the platform, his movements efficient yet unhurried, a professional in a trade as old as the roots we've traced, now blooming in this very spot. In some towns, the square's execution site was also used for maypole dances during festivals. The same poles repurposed for hanging or wheeling talk about venue versatility. from merry twirls to morbid spins, because why waste good real estate on just one kind of gathering? You chuckle softly to yourself, imagining a sign-up sheet. Book the square today, executions in the AM, weddings in the PM, no refunds if there's overlap. The gentle sarcasm lingers. A whispery bomb in the ASMR cadence of rustling leaves stirred by a light breeze. You sense the build-up intensifying, the anticipation coiling tighter as heralds blow horns to signal the procession's approach, their brassy notes piercing the morning haze. Faces turn expectantly, a wave of silence rippling outward before chatter resumes. Let's exchange on how long the condemned might endure cruel wagers that underscore the event's dual role as justice and entertainment. It's like tailgating at a medieval Super Bowl, complete with snacks and side bets, but instead of touchdowns, it's touchdowns of the mallet variety. You'd probably stream it live if you could, with popcorn in one hand and a not for the faint-hearted disclaimer. The executioner's readiness sharpens further. Don's heavy gloves, the leather creaking as he flexes his fingers, and arranges a bucket of water nearby, perhaps to revive the sufferer or cleanse his tools, the liquid surface rippling gently in the torchlight. You watch, mesmerized, as he paces the scaffold, his boots thudding dully, embodying the stoic detachment required for such work, paid in coin, and perhaps a measure of infamy that isolates him from the very crowd he serves. Sensory details envelop you, faint metallic tang of oiled iron from the bindings, the warmth of bodies packed close radiating like a living furnace, grounding you in this pivotal moment. Scholars openly debate the psychological effects of these public sights on spectators, questioning whether the anticipation fostered empathy or desensitization, potentially eroding the moral fabric it aimed to uphold. The air softens with the scent of blooming jasmine from nearby walls, inviting a pause in the narrative's flow. Picture the executioner warming up like a golfer, swinging practice mallets or should I say for Linsdown. You smile faintly, the humor a soft echo amid the growing din. As the square fills to capacity, barriers of wooden stakes keep the press at bay, guards in chainmail scanning for unrest, their armor clinking softly. The wheel, centerpiece of dread, stands immutable, its history etched in scars from previous uses, a callback to the preparation's eerie calm now transformed into this vibrant, volatile energy. You feel the crowd's fever pitch, heart sensing in a shared rhythm of awe and apprehension. The executioner's poise stands a counterpoint of calculated poise. Fringe whispers add color, curiously. Some squares featured lucky spots where viewers claimed visions or omens during executions, turning the site into a superstitious hotspot because who doesn't love a side of mysticism? With their morning morality play, the anticipation crests as distant drums begin to roll, signaling arrival, the square alive with expectation that pulls you deeper into the unfolding drama. Your breath slows, the sleepy lilt carrying you through the sensory symphony, sun cresting higher, bathing the wheel in golden light, as the executioner's grim readiness promises a spectacle etched forever in the annals of peasant memory. The spectacle etched forever in the annals of peasant memory sharpens, now as the drum's rolling thunder fades into a hush that blankets the square, drawing all eyes to the scaffold where the executioner's shadow merges with the wheel's unyielding form. You ascend the wooden steps slowly, each one creaking underfoot like a reluctant confession, the rough grain biting into the soles of your feet, as the crowd's murmurs swell into a collective intake of breath. The sun's golden light warms your skin faintly, contrasting the icy dread coiling in your gut. As strong hands guide you forward, guards' grips firm yet impersonal, their leather gauntlets smelling of sweat and oil from a morning's preparations. This is the moment of binding, where the condemned becomes one with the wheel, strapped down in a ritual of precision that ensures every twist and turn amplifies the suffering to come. A callback to the site's anticipation now realized in the executioner's methodical dance. You reach the platform, the air up here thinner somehow, carrying the sharp scent of pine resin from the freshly hewn beams and the faint, underlying earthiness of the square below. The executioner nods curtly, his hooded eyes betraying no emotion as he positions you against the wheel, its surface cool and splintery against your back, spokes jutting out like accusatory fingers ready to cradle your limbs. Ropes are uncoiled with a soft hiss, thick hemp fibers rough as they loop around your wrists and ankles, pulled taut with deliberate tugs that stretch your body into a star-shaped vulnerability. You feel the bindings bite in, not cruelly at first but insistently, securing you so movement is a futile dream, each knot tied with the expertise of one who's done this under countless skies. The crowd watches rapt, the sea of faces blurring at the edges, their anticipation now a palpable wave washing over you in whispers and gasps. As the process unfolds, the mainstream historical fact emerges from the haze of history. In the medieval West, as glimpsed in Fossier's accounts of rural punishments, victims were typically bound spread-eagled to the wheel's circumference, limbs threaded between spokes to expose bones for targeted breaking, a technique that prolonged agony while allowing the public to witness every flinch and cry. You sense the executioner's breath, steady and measured, as he adjusts your position, tilting the wheel slightly for better access, ensuring your head remains free to turn, eyes perhaps forced to meet the onlooker's gaze. The ropes cinch tighter, a gradual pressure building like a storm cloud gathering, your muscles straining against the immovable hold. The sensory pull of fibers chafing skin heightening the surreal detachment. The methodical positioning continues, him stepping back to appraise his work like an artist surveying a canvas, then leaning in to secure additional straps across your torso. The buckle's cold metal pressing into your chest with a click that echoes in your ears. You imagine the view from below, the wheel now living to blow, your form the centerpiece, shadows playing across your face as the sun climbs higher. Gentle sarcasm drifts in like a stray thought. Here you are, getting the ultimate tie-down service, courtesy of medieval hospitality, because nothing says secure your spot quite like being lashed to a giant wagon part. A soft chuckle escapes in your mind, easing the tension just a whisper. You glide through the details, feeling the wheel tilt under you, perhaps rotated slowly to test the bindings, the world spinning in a nauseating blur of sky and ground, halting with a jolt that sends vibrations through your frame. The executioner mutters instructions to assistants, their voices low rumbles, as they fetch irons or wedges to lock limbs in place, ensuring maximum exposure for the blows ahead. Sensory immersion deepens, faint creak of wood settling, the warmth of sunlight on one side of your body while the other chills in shadow, the distant call of a bird overhead mocking the gravity below. This positioning isn't hasty, it's an art of suffering, drawn out to build dread, callbacks to the preparation's eerie calm now manifesting in these final adjustments. In certain French regions, the wheel was occasionally preheated over coals before binding, not to burn, but to add a layer of psychological heat. Imagine lying on a toasty torture bed, thinking, at least it's not a cold start to the day. You smile faintly inwardly, the humor a gentle puff of air in the ASMR hush, picturing a modern spy gone wrong. Warm wheel therapy, relax those bones before we rearrange them. The process nears completion as he fastens the last restraint, a chain perhaps clinking across your midsection for extra hold. The metallic tang sharp in your nostrils mingling with the crowd's rising scent of unwashed anticipation. You feel utterly exposed, the wind brushing exposed skin like inquisitive fingers, the square sounds amplifying the shuffle of feet, a child's muffled question, the executioner's tools being laid out with deliberate clatters. It's like being prepped for the world's worst roller coaster, strapped in with no safety bar and a sign reading thrills not guaranteed, survival optional. You'd probably yell for the operator to stop. But here, the ride's already sold out. Scholars openly debate the intent behind such meticulous binding. Was it purely to immobilize for efficiency, or a deliberate extension of mental torment, heightening awareness of impending doom in a culture where spectacle equaled deterrence? The air around you stills momentarily, the scent of blooming flowers from nearby market stalls wafting incongruously, inviting a linger on these scholarly whispers. You sense the final tweaks now, the executioner circling once more, tugging ropes to confirm no slack, his presence a looming shadow that blocks the sun briefly, casting you in eclipse. The wheel, now your unwilling throne, feels alive beneath you, its history of prior victims etched in faint stains and grooves that press into your flesh. Think of it as extreme yoga holding the starfish pose for eternity, with the instructor swinging a mallet instead of chanting namaste. The sleepy cadence lulls you, senses stretching like the bindings themselves. As positioning culminates, the crowd's hush deepens, all eyes on this human fusion with wood and rope, the methodical process transforming you from prisoner to exhibit. Fringe echoes add a twist. Some tales speak of merciful bindings that allowed slight shifts to avoid instant lethality, a rare nod to humanity in the cruelty, though whether fact or fable. It whispers of variance in executioner's codes. You ponder this, the sun's rays filtering through, warming the ropes that now define your world. The moment crystallizes, suffering stage set with precision, your breath sensing to the square's rhythmic distant toll of a bell, the executioner's retreating steps signaling readiness. Callbacks to the site's grim poise amplify here, the anticipation peaking as the first tool is lifted, the wheel's embrace complete in its unforgiving hold. Your thoughts drift in the haze, the ASMR quality enveloping the scene in a cocoon of historical inevitability, carrying you toward the strikes that will shatter the silence. The shattering silence descends like a veil over the square, the wheel's unforgiving hold now your entire world, as the executioner's shadow looms larger, his mallet raised high against the climbing sun that bathes the scene in an unforgiving glare. You brace instinctively, muscles tensing against the ropes that bite deeper with every shallow breath, the wood beneath you creaking faintly as if in sympathy or mockery for the ordeal about to unfold. The crowd's hush is absolute, a collective breath held in thrall, broken only by the distant caw of a crow wheeling overhead as the first strike whistles down, a blur of motion that connects with your limb in a thunderous crack that reverberates through your core. Pain explodes like a starburst, sharp and all-consuming, yet this is just the beginning. Initial bone-crushing blows designed not to end you swiftly, but to draw out the symphony of suffering, echoing the precise techniques honed over centuries. In this medieval theater of justice, you feel the impact ripple outward, the malet's heavy head perhaps iron-capped for added weight smashing into the spoke-bound arm or leg with calculated force, splintering bone without severing flesh entirely. The sensory assault is overwhelming, a wet snap like green wood breaking followed by the warm trickle of blood seeping through your shift, its metallic scent mingling with the dusty air of the square. The executioner pauses, stepping back to assess, his breath steady as he circles the wheel, choosing the next target with the deliberation of a craftsman at his forge. This isn't random brutality, it's a mainstream historical fact from Fossier's glimpses into peasant punishments. The breaking wheel involved systematic strikes, often starting with the legs to immobilize and prolong consciousness, each blow aimed between spokes to fracture shins, thighs, arms, and finally the torso, ensuring agony lingered for hours or even days as a public testament. As the second strike lands, targeting the opposite limb, you endure the fresh wave of torment, your body arching involuntarily against the bindings, the ropes chafing raw as stars dance behind your closed eyelids. The technique is precise blows delivered from above or the side, leveraging gravity and leverage to crush without immediate fatality. The mallet swung in wide arcs that whoosh through the air like a scythe through wheat. You hear the crowd's gasp, a choral exhale that fuels the spectacle, some averting eyes while others lean in, faces alight with a mix of horror and fascination. The executioner rotates the wheel slightly between hits, exposing new angles, his boots thudding on the scaffold like a metronome of doom, prolonging the process to maximize visibility and deterrence in this roll to blow. Gentle sarcasm whispers through your mind amid the haze. Well, here's your complimentary full-body massage, medieval style, guaranteed to work out all those knots, one fracture at a time. A faint chuckle bubbles internally, a fleeting shield against the onslaught, as the third blow connects, shattering another bone with a dull thud that vibrates up your spine. You learn through the fog of pain how variations existed. In some regions, a spiked club replaced the mallet for added laceration, while others used the wheel's edge itself, rolling it overland, techniques refined to avoid vital arteries, keeping the heart pumping blood to fuel extended suffering. The air thickens with the scent of sweat. Yours, the executioners, the crowds blending into a heady brew that clings like fog. You glide through the sequence, each initial strike building on the last, the executioner wiping his brow with a rag between swings. His movements, efficient to conserve energy for what could be a lengthy performance. Sensory details anchor you, the sun's heat intensifying on exposed skin, contrasting the cold numbness spreading from broken limbs. The faint taste of salt from bitten lips mingling with dust kicked up by shifting spectators. This prolongation isn't accidental, it's engineered. Callbacks to the binding's methodical precision now paying off in extended torment, allowing the condemned to cry out confessions or pleas that echo across the square, reinforcing the lesson for all. In certain executions, the first blows were sometimes dedicated to specific victims of the crime, announced aloud by a herald. Talk about personalized punishment, as if etching grievances bone by bone. You imagine the herald booming, "This one's for the merchant you robbed, crack, and this for his poor horse," turning justice into a grim dedication ceremony. The light humor softens the edge, a sleepy whisper in the narrative's cadence, picturing a modern award show gone awry. And the Oscar for Best Supporting Fracture goes to. The blows continue in measured rhythm, perhaps 4 or 5 in this initial phase, targeting extremities to hobble without haste, the executioner gauging your reactions, fading cries or resilient gasps to adjust force. It's akin to a twisted game of whack-a-mole, where the moles are your bones and the hammer never misses. You'd probably rage quit early, controller smashed, opting for a cozy bedtime story instead. The ASMR quality lulls despite the intensity, sentences lengthening like the shadows creeping across the scaffold. Scholars openly debate the number of initial strikes standard across regions. Was it a fixed 8, symbolizing completeness, or varied by the executioner's whim and the crime's gravity, with some arguing it reflected cultural numerology tied to religious doctrines? The air around you seems to pulse with each impact, the scent of crushed herbs from a heater's nearby stall wafting ironically, inviting contemplation amid the chaos. You endure onward, the technique's precision shining through as the mallet avoids the head and heart initially, preserving awareness for the crowd's edification. Feel the wheel spin again, repositioning you like a macabre carousel, each turn eliciting fresh groans from the mechanism and your shattered form. The initial phase builds to a crescendo, bones yielding like brittle clay, the pain a roaring tide that ebbs only momentarily between strikes. Consider it extreme acupuncture and out mallets in, for that deep tissue release you never asked for. You smile inwardly, faintly, the humor gentle exhale. As the first series concludes, the executioner signals a pause, perhaps dousing you with water from a bucket to revive flagging senses, the cool splash shocking against fevered skin. Its rivulets tracing paths over bruises blooming like dark flowers. Some accounts whisper of practice strikes on dummies beforehand, ensuring the executioners ain't stayed true because rehearsal makes perfect, even in horror. You ponder this, the sun beating down relentlessly, amplifying the ordeal's heat. The prolongation techniques crystallize hair blows space to allow recovery, the wheel's design facilitating access without mercy kills. Callbacks to earlier anticipations amplify the immersion, the square's energy feeding off your endurance, peasants murmuring prayers or jeers that blend into a background hum. Your breath's ragged now, the initial blow's legacy a throbbing symphony, yet life clings tenaciously, the precise methods ensuring agony's slow burn rather than swift extinguishment. You sense the shift impending, the executioner's grip tightening on the mallet for what follows. But for now, the initial crushing holds you in its grip, a testament to medieval ingenuity in suffering's art. The sleepy lilt carries you through, the narrative's flow unbroken, as pain's echoes reverberate, setting the stage for the extended torment ahead. The extended torment ahead envelops you now, the initial blow's echoes fading into a pulsating haze that blurs the line between endurance and oblivion as the executioner circles once more, his mallet resting momentarily on his shoulder like a weary companion. You linger in this limbo body, a map of fractures throbbing in rhythm with your ragged breaths, the wheel beneath you sticky with your own essence. It's what absorbing the warmth that seeps from shattered limbs. The sun climbs higher, beating down relentlessly on the square, turning sweat into rivulets that trace salty paths over your skin, mingling with the metallic tang of blood that hangs heavy in the air. This is the prolonged agony, where time stretches like molten taffy, the method's variations unfolding in deliberate waves to ensure suffering isn't a sprint but a marathon. Callbacks to the strike's precision now blooming into hours of public display that test the limits of human resilience. You feel the world tilt as the wheel is rotated again, exposing your form to fresh angles for the crowd's scrutiny, their faces a distant blur of fascination and revulsion, whispers rising like smoke from the throng below. The executioner resumes with measured swings, not the furious onslaught of before but spaced blows that target the torso or remaining intact bones, each one a dull thud that radiates inward like ripples in a pond of pain. Sensory waves crash over you, faint creak of ropes straining against your convulsions, the warmth of sunlight contrasting the cold numbness creeping from extremities, the distant murmur of vendors still hawking wares as if this were merely intermission at a grim festival. In this drawn-out phase, variations emerge across regions. In France, as Fossier's Peasant Chronicles hint, the wheel might be elevated on a pole post breaking, hoisted like a macabre banner for birds to peck at, prolonging exposure until death claims you slowly under the open sky. As agony deepens, you discover how mercy strokes known as coups de grâce play their ambivalent role, a final blow to the chest or head offered in some locales to hasten the end, but only after sufficient torment has satisfied justice's demands. The mainstream historical fact here is rooted in medieval legal customs. By the 13th century in the Holy Roman Empire, these mercy strikes were regulated, often delayed for hours or days to amplify deterrence, ensuring the condemned lingered in view as a living or barely living warning to the peasantry gathered below. You imagine the executioner hesitating, mallet poised, gauging the crowd's mood or the Lord's signal before delivering that potential release. The air thickening with anticipation as your breaths grow shallower, each inhale laced with the earthy scent of the scaffold's timbers. Gentle sarcasm drifts in like a cooling breeze of mercy strokes because after turning you into a human pretzel, they figured a quick nightcap was the polite way to wrap things up, like tipping your waiter after a meal that nearly killed you. A soft chuckle echoes in your mind, the humor of fleeting pillow against the relentless ache, as another variation whispers through in Iberian territories. The method sometimes incorporated garroting beforehand, twisting a cord around the neck to strangle partially before wheeling, blending suffocation with crushing for a bespoke blend of horror. You linger further, the prolonged phase revealing regional flavors. In the Low Countries, the wheel might be set rolling down a hill pre-execution for added bruising, while Swiss practices favored leaving the broken form displayed for days, scavengers circling overhead with lazy flaps of wings that stir the air currents around you. Feel the insects alighting tentatively on your skin, their tiny feet a prickling distraction amid the deeper throbs, the crowd thinning slightly as the spectacle drags on, some drifting away to chores while others remain, transfixed by your endurance. The role of mercy varies wildly in compassionate moments. A priest might plead for an early stroke if confessions flow freely, but often it's withheld, letting nature or infection claim the final victory in a slow fade that mirrors the era's harsh rhythms. Oddly, in some alpine villages, the mercy stroke was occasionally replaced by a healing herb poultice applied mid-torment, not to soothe but to revive senses for further suffering. Talk about alternative medicine gone rogue, as if saying, Here, sniff this, it'll make the next crack feel brand new. You smile faintly inwardly, picturing a herbalist hawking it like wheelside service, peppermint for pep, or lavender for that lingering vibe. The light joke softens the narrative's edge, a whispery lull in the ASMR cadence that lengthens sentences like shadows at noon. It's reminiscent of those endless Zoom meetings where the host drags on forever, and you're just waiting for that mercy and call button, except here, the logouts a mallet swing, and no one's muting the screams. You'd probably hit snooze on history's alarm clock, curling up with a blanket instead of tuning in. The sleepy rhythm pulls you deeper. The torment's extension, a canvas for variations that paint suffering in local hues. Scholars openly debate the efficacy of these prolonged methods, and mercy's timid regional differences stem from cultural mercy gradients, with Northern Europe favoring quicker ends versus the drawn-out Southern spectacles. Or was it more about practicalities like crowd control and executioner fatigue? The air around you seems to hum with unresolved questions, the scent of roasting chestnuts from a vendor's cart wafting up incongruously, inviting a pause in the haze. You sense the agony evolving, perhaps a brief respite, as water is splashed again, its cool shock reviving you just enough to register the crowd's shifting dynamics, child and being ushered away. Elders nodding in grim approval. In German lands, mercy might come via a sword thrust after the breaking, a cleaner end for nobles occasionally granted the wheel, while peasants endured the full linger. Feel the sun's arc chasing higher, shadows shortening as hours tick by, your mind wandering in delirious loops, callbacks to the initial strikes, now distant thunder in a storm that refuses to break. Envision the executioner checking his sundial mid-torment, time for mercy. Nah, let's give it another spin. The crowd still munching popcorn, the humor a soft exhale, blending with sensory tides, faint rustle of leaves in a nearby tree, the warmth pooling in unbroken pockets of your form. Variations persist. Italian methods sometimes added fire beneath the wheel for smoking torment, a fringe heat that blurred lines between breaking and burning, whispered in obscure chronicles as a nod to inquisitorial flair. The role of mercy strokes crystallizes in this extension, a double-edged blade, offering release yet underscoring the power to withhold it. Regions debating its application in hushed councils. You hover in the torment's embrace, breath sensing to the square's waning energy, the prolonged agony a testament to medieval endurance tests that outlasted even the hardiest souls. Fringe tales add whimsy. Some say certain condemned survived initial phases only to be mercifully wheeled again if they healed too well, recycling at its most macabre. As the day wears on, the variations and mercy's elusive dance weave a tapestry of suffering that defies quick closure, your form a broken vessel adrift on pain's sea. The scholarly debate lingers like fading light, were mercy strokes true compassion or mere theatrics, influenced by Enlightenment precursors seeping into later practices. You ponder this, the world softening at the edges, the ASMR hush carrying you toward the spectacle's unfolding climax, where public reactions begin to mirror the inner chaos. The inner chaos mirrors outward now, rippling through the assembled masses like a stone skipped across a still pond, as your prolonged agony becomes the focal point of a communal drama that binds the square in shared voyeurism. You hover in this elevated limbo, the wheel hoisted higher perhaps on its pole, your broken form swaying gently in the breeze that carries the mingled scents of sweat-soaked wool and the faint, acrid smoke from dying torches. The crowd below surges and recedes in waves, their reactions a tapestry of human emotion unfolding in real-time, gasps escaping like puffs of mist, faces contorting in horror or hardened resolve, children burying their heads in parental skirts while elders nod sagely, murmuring approvals laced with the era's stoic fatalism. This public spectacle, rooted in the medieval justice system, as Fossier illuminates his peasant chronicles, served not just as punishment but as a ritual of reinforcement, where the breaking wheel's horror cemented social order amid the vulnerabilities of rural life. You observe from your vantage, vision blurring at the edges yet sharp enough to catch the nuances, A young apprentice clutching his cap, eyes wide with a mix of awe and nausea. A matron crossing herself repeatedly, her lips moving in silent prayers that blend with the low hum of collective commentary drifting upward like incense. The execution's role here is pivotal, a mainstream historical fact etched in feudal codes by the 12th century across Europe. Such displays were mandated for grave crimes to foster deterrence, educating the peasantry on consequences through visceral theater that turned abstract law into tangible terror, ensuring loyalty to lords and church in an age without widespread policing. Sensory details pull you deeper, distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer from an adjacent street, echoing the Malay's earlier thuds, the warmth of the afternoon sun baking the square's cobblestones, radiating up in shimmers that distort the air on upturned faces. As reactions unfold, you sense the spectrum. Some spectators jeer faintly, tossing epithets like thieves and that cut through the murmurs, venting communal rage at the crimes that threatened their harvests or hearts. Others weep quietly, perhaps kin or those touched by similar hardships. Their sobs a soft counterpoint to the executioner's occasional adjustments below. The spectacle's grip tightens, drawing in travelers and locals alike, conversations buzzing about past wheels that broke notorious bandits, reinforcing the justice system's narrative of balance restored. You feel the energy shift, initial shock giving way to reflective chatter, villagers debating the condemned's fate as if it were a morality play scripted by divine hand. Gentle sarcasm whispers through the haze. Oh, nothing bonds a community like a good old-fashioned bone-crunching matinee popcorn, optional. But bring your own moral compass, because this show's got plot twists that'll keep you up at night. A faint chuckle lingers in your thoughts, easing the weight of observation, as you note how the crowd's diversity amplifies the role. Merchants pausing trade to watch, their stalls abandoned mid-haggle, clergy intoning lessons from the sidelines, turning agony into allegory for sin's wages. This integration into daily life underscores medieval justice's theatrical essence, where the wheel wasn't hidden in prisons but paraded publicly to imprint fear as a preventive measure. Callbacks to the site's anticipation now fulfilled in this collective catharsis. You glide through more reactions, spotting a group of youths mimicking the strikes with sticks on the ground, their laughter a jarring note that highlights desensitization's creep. Nearby, a healer peddles salves for execution-induced ailments, capitalizing on the emotional toll with opportunistic flair. The execution's role evolves in real time, metering not just through pain but via social pressure, as neighbors eye each other warily, wondering who might next grace the wheel for a boundary dispute gone awry. Sensory immersion deepens, the faint rustle of skirts as women shift uncomfortably, the tangy scent of spilled ale from a toppled mug amid the press, grounding you in this human mosaic. A quirky tidbit flits across the scene like a mischievous sprite. In some Bavarian towns, spectators occasionally threw Lucky Charms, rotten fruits, or pebbles at the wheel post-execution, believing it warded off evil spirits drawn to the suffering, turning the spectacle into an impromptu exorcism party where produced double as projectiles. You imagine the executioner dodging a wayward apple, grumbling, "Thanks for the snack, folks. Next time aim for the birds." The light joke softens the intensity, a sleepy murmur in the ASMR flow that lengthens the narrative's breath. It's like scrolling through a live-streamed event gone viral with commenters flooding the chat 10/10 for drama, but needs better lighting. Except here, the refresh button's your own blinking eyes, and logging off means turning a blind eye to history's feed. You'd probably hit mute on the medieval equivalent, opting for cat videos to unwind. The cadence lulls you, senses stretching like the afternoon shadows creeping across the square. Scholars openly debate the execution's effectiveness as a deterrent, questioning whether these spectacles truly curbed crime or merely displaced it, fostering underground resentments that fueled peasant revolts in later centuries. The air around you pulses with this uncertainty, the scent of fresh bread from a baker's cart wafting up as a reminder of life's continuance amid death's display, inviting reflection. On justice's dual blade, you witness further unfolding. As hours drag, reactions mellow into fatigue, some dispersing to fields or hearths, carrying tales that will echo in evening firesides. Others linger, drawn by morbid curiosity or a sense of duty to see justice through. The wheel's role in medieval justice shines clearest here as educator, entertainer, and enforcer, weaving fear into the social fabric to maintain equilibrium in Fossier's depicted world of toil and tenuous peace. Feel the crowd's pulse sensing to your fading one, their averted gazes or bold stares a mirror of societal conscience, the spectacle binding them in a shared narrative of caution. Another light joke bubbles softly. Picture the crowd rating it on a medieval Yelp 5 stars for spectacle. But the seating was murder. Would deter again? You smile inwardly. The humor a gentle exhale blending with the waning din. Fringe echoes add depth curiously. Some chronicles mention miracle interruptions, like sudden storms halting proceedings, interpreted as divine commentary on the justice meted out, whether as the ultimate critic reigning on the parade of punishment. The debate persists. Did public reactions validate the system's deterrent power with lowered crime rates post-execution, or inflate perceptions of authorities' cruelty, sowing seeds for reform? Callbacks to the torment's variations amplify this. Mercy's delay, now a point of communal discourse murmured below. You observe the climax waning, the crowd's energy ebbing as the sun dips lower, casting long shadows that dance across faces etched with the day's impressions. As the spectacle draws toward closure, reactions crystallize into lore stories to be retold, lessons ingrained, the execution's role cemented as a cornerstone of medieval order. Sensory tides recede, the cooling breeze carrying hints of evening dew, the murmur softening to whispers. Your form a silent teacher in the square's fading light. The sleepy lilt envelops you, carrying onward to reflections on legacy, where the wheel's echo fades into history's quiet annals. The wheel's echo fades into history's quiet annals, now pulling you gently from the square's waning light into the softer glow of retrospect, where the brutal device begins its slow retreat from the stage of human affairs. You drift through time's corridors, the air growing lighter, scented with the musty pages of old ledgers, and the faint aroma of ink drying on reformist pamphlets. As Enlightenment's dawn casts long shadows over medieval shadows, hearing this reflective haze, you ponder the breaking wheel's decline, tracing its abolition through waves of philosophical upheaval that reshaped punishment's landscape, leaving behind ripples that still lap at modern shores of justice and mercy. The spectacle's clamor softens to whispers, callbacks to the crowd's reactions, now mere footnotes in a grander narrative of change, where reason supplants raw terror. You settle into a candlelit study, perhaps that of a 18th century thinker, the flicker of flame dancing across leather-bound volumes stacked like silent sentinels, their spines cracked from fervent debates. The mainstream historical fact anchors this shift. By the late 1700s, as Enlightenment ideals spread across Europe, fueled by figures like Voltaire and Beccaria, the breaking wheel was increasingly condemned as barbaric, leading to its formal abolition in France during the Revolution in 1791, a move that rippled outward to other nations grappling with humane reforms amid rising calls for proportionality in penalties. You feel the weight of quills scratching parchment, drafting edicts that dismantled scaffolds brick by brick, the air humming with the optimism of progress as public opinion turned against spectacles that once unified communities in fear but now symbolized outdated tyranny. As you trace further, the decline unfolds like a tapestry, unraveling thread by thread, first in Prussia under Frederick the Great's edicts in the 1740s, where torture's tools were quietly shelved in favor of prisons and fines, then accelerating through Austria and Tuscany, where rulers influenced by rationalist tracts banned the wheel to align with the merging concepts of human dignity. Sensory details envelop you, the crisp snap of sealing wax on decrees, the distant echo of hammers not crushing bones but building workhouses. A transition from agony's theater to rehabilitation's quiet halls. You imagine yourself wandering empty squares, once alive with crowds, now peaceful markets, where the only wheels turn on carts laden with goods, the earth scent fresh and untainted by dread. Gentle sarcasm tiptoes in like a late guest, enlightenmentally deciding that maybe crushing folks like grapes wasn't the best vintage for society, opting instead for a smoother blend of locks and keys, because who needs drama when you can have detention? A soft chuckle warms your thoughts, easing the narrative's flow, as you reflect on how these reforms weren't overnight miracles, but gradual erodings, chiseled by petitions and protests that echoed the peasants' long-suffered burdens. You delve into the abolition's path, feeling the momentum build through the 19th century Belgium, phasing it out in 1863, Bavaria clinging until 1813 before yielding to Prussian influence, the last known use in Europe flickering out in the early 1800s as industrialization shifted focus from public shaming to private penance. Ponder the irony, the wheel born in antiquity's cradle and blooming in medieval fields, wilted under the gaze of progress, its spokes bent by books rather than bodies. Modern aside, it's like upgrading from a flip phone to a smart phoneser. The old model had that satisfying snap, but the new one's all about efficiency and fewer drop calls to humanity. You'd probably text your ancestors a thumbs-up emoji for finally hanging up on the horror. The lasting impact lingers, seeping into today's views like ink bleeding through paper, shaping debates on capital punishment and cruelty's place in law. You sit by a window overlooking a contemporary cityscape, the hum of traffic a distant lullaby, contemplating how the wheel's ghost haunts discussions on ethics, reminding us that deterrence once meant display, now tempered by rights and rehabilitation. Sensory immersion deepens, the cool glass against your forehead, the faint coffee aroma from a nearby mug, grounding reflections on how this method's brutality fueled anti-torture movements, influencing international laws that ban such excesses in our era. A quirky tidbit emerges from history's odd corners. Curiously, in the waning days of its use, some wheels were repurposed as millstones for grinding grain, transforming tools of torment into bread makers. Talk about turning swords into plowshares, or in this case, spokes into sustenance, because nothing says redemption like a loaf baked on yesterday's nightmare. You smile faintly, imagining a baker kneading dough with a wink, fresh from the wheel of fortune, extra crunchy crust guaranteed. Scholars openly debate the true catalysts for abolition. Was it purely Enlightenment philosophy driving the change, or economic shifts like urbanization that rendered public executions logistically obsolete, with experts arguing over the interplay of ideas versus practicalities in reshaping punitive paradigms? The air around you softens with the scent of rain on distant pavements, inviting a linger on these intellectual currents that swept away the old guard. You trace onward, the wheel's legacy manifesting in cultural echoes, literature painting it as a symbol of dark ages, films dramatizing its horror to critique power's abuses, even fireworks named Catherine wheels spinning harmless sparks as a nod to its saintly origins. Feel the evolution, from peasant terror to museum curiosity, encased in glass where visitors gaze with detached fascination. The wood scars a silent testimony to endured epochs. Another light joke drifts in. Think of it as the wheel retiring to a nice exhibit, trading screens for school trips. Kids, this is what happened when you didn't eat your veggies. Or rob the Lord. The humor, a gentle whisper blending with the ASMR hush that lengthens your breaths. Pondering deeper, the impact on modern punishment views crystallized Toda's emphasis on reform over retribution. Prisons designed for correction rather than crushing owes a debt to the revulsion stirred by such methods. You envision global courts citing historical cruelties to uphold human rights. The wheel's decline, a benchmark for progress, yet a caution against regression in troubled times. Fringe whispers add intrigue. Some esoteric societies allegedly preserve wheel replicas for ritualistic symbolism. Not execution but meditation on cycles of suffering, turning terror into philosophy. a peculiar afterlife for a device of doom. The reflections culminate, abolition's triumph a beacon amid history's gloom, its legacy a mirror reflecting our evolving compassion. Callbacks to the torment's echoes now hushed, the narrative gliding toward closure, where the wheel rests in oblivion's embrace, its lessons etched in the collective soul. You sense the fade, time's river carrying you to calmer waters, the sleepy cadence enveloping all in a soothing veil. As the wheel's shadow lengthens into the twilight of memory, you feel the pace easing, like a gentle current drawing you downstream toward restful shores. The harsh clangs and cries dissolve into a soft murmur, replaced by the whisper of leaves rustling in a tranquil breeze, carrying scents of lavender and chamomile that soothe the senses and quiet the mind. No more the square's clamor or the scaffolds creak. Instead, envision a serene meadow at dusk, fireflies twinkling like distant stars, their glow a reassuring promise that even the darkest tales find their end in light. You've journeyed through antiquity's cradle, medieval fields of toil, and the slow bloom of mercy's reforms, emerging wiser, perhaps a touch wearier, but safe in the knowledge that humanity's arc bends toward kinder paths. Let the weight of history slip away now, shoulders relaxing as if cradled by the softest down, breaths deepening into a rhythm that syncs with the world's gentle turn. The wheel spins no more in your thoughts, its legacy a faded echo, inviting you to release the day's reflections into the night. Close your eyes, dear listener, and drift on this calming tide, where dreams await unburdened by the past's chains. Whispering winds carry you further, vocabulary softening like velvet under fingertips, senses stretching into endless horizons of peace. Reassurance wraps around you warm, tomorrow brings fresh stories, lighter tales under sunnier skies. Fade now into that final imagery, a quiet library at midnight, books closing with satisfied sighs, the wheel consigned to dusty shelves where it harms none. Sleep beckons sweetly, a blanket of stars overhead, guiding you to restorative slumber.